Hi, it's Mike with AskTractorMike.com. Well, in my last video, I talked about servicing your brush hog or bush hog. Bush hog's a brand name, but whatever you want to call it, a rough cut rotary cutter, in order to get it in the field. I don't know what it's like where you are, but where I'm at, we've had a lot of rain and the weeds are yay tall, and it's time to get out and knock them down with my brush hog. And in the last video, I talked about servicing it, and I'll put a link at the end if you didn't see that video. When this one's over, go back and watch that. Today's video is going to talk about how to tweak the brush hog to get it to mow the best it can and give you the best performance and less wear and tear on it and your tractor. Now, before we get started, I want to say this. A lot of folks buy a rough cut rotary cutter, a brush hog, bush hog, whatever you want to call it, and expect it to mow like your lawnmower does, and they're really not designed for that. A zero-turn lawnmower or a finish mower is designed to have turbulence under there from the blades, and usually they have more blades and they're thinner than a brush hog, and they're designed to lift the crop up with air or the lawn, the grass up, and cut it off evenly, and then expel that off to the side or off to the back. And it's a pretty scientific design with air current and everything to make sure you get that premium cut. That's why some zero turns cut better than others. The ones that cut the best have got years of experience and design in the deck in order to make that grass come up and get cut off evenly and then expelled. But a brush hog is not like that. A brush hog is designed to make tall grass short and to cut off woody plants and leave kind of a jagged cut. They're not designed to have a beautiful cut. And the reason for that is in your pasture, you've got all these woody plants that have grown up, and you want to knock those off and give the grass a chance to grow up for livestock. And on woody plants, the more jagged the cut, the less chance it has of good regrowth. It really doesn't matter with the grass as much, but with the woody plants, it does. So having a jagged cut on buckbrush or multiflora rose or any of those crops you have in your area is a good thing, and that's what you want. The other thing about a brush hog deck, it's thicker because there's more material going to be under there. If you're like I am, and I'm occasionally out cutting weeds that are up taller than my head on the tractor, there's a lot of material in there that's coming down and going in, and it's got to go out the back. And in order for all that material to accumulate in there and it's still the machine to cut, you've got to have a big chamber under there. And that's not good for making a pretty cut like a finish mower, but it's great if you're trying to make really tall weeds short and give the grass a chance to regrow. One of the biggest issues I've had when I was in the dealership world with customers not liking their brush hog or bush hog rotary cutter is with cut quality when somebody was wanting to mow pretty high. If you're wanting to mow at, say, 5 inches or even 6 inches, and I applaud you doing that for certain reasons we'll talk about, but if you're wanting to mow that high, don't expect to get a great cut. And that's because you've got a big chamber there, you've got these blades spinning, and especially in the summer, they'll tend to blow the crop down and then try to cut it, and that doesn't work too well. So your chamber on your bush hog is designed to take a lot of material in, cut it off, and then leave it out the back. So don't expect the greatest cut from your brush hog, but we're going to give you some tips today that'll get it as good as possible. Now, I have seen some situations where people are complaining about their tractor losing power with their brush hog, and they're like, what is wrong with my tractor? And usually it's from somebody with hydrostatic drive, and they're going up an incline, and all of a sudden the whole thing starts bogging down and they feel like a tractor's getting ready to die. Well, what's going on there is especially if you're cutting tall grass or tall weeds, you're getting a lot of material under that deck, and it's starting to take the horsepower away from the tractor. And if it's not going out the back, you might have the equivalent of a hay bale underneath that cutter, and you're trying to cut all that material up at once. So what I tell you today is going to try to keep that from happening. Well, the first thing we're going to check before we go to the field is to make sure we've got a level brush hog. And the first step before you check that is to make sure your tractor is level too. If you've got a slow leak in one of the back tires, that could make the lower link arms not be level. And if that's the case, you're not going to get a level cut in the field. So check your tractor air pressure first and make sure you've got the same PSI on one side that you do the other. After that, we're going to get our level and check our brush hog. Be on level ground and check to make sure it's level. Now you'll notice there's an adjustment on one of the lower link arms to change the height to one side. Some tractors have got it on both sides, but most have it only on one side. And it's either a turnbuckle or a crank. And if it's off a little bit, you can adjust it there, but make sure it's level from side to side before you go to the field. Next thing we're going to do is try to determine how much higher your blades are than the skids on the front of your brush hog. If you look on the front of your brush hog, most of them have a skid plate or a wear plate on the front that comes down, and if you dig into the ground, that's what hits. It's not a solid piece of metal that'll bend. It's a wear plate on both sides. And so we want to find out how much higher the blades are than the wear plate. On my bush hog brand, it's about an inch difference. The bottom of the blades are about an inch higher than the skid plates. So if I'm wanting to mow at a height of 4 inches, I want that skid plate 3 inches off the ground. And then I know my blades are up an inch higher than that, and that's where they're going to cut. So determine what height you're going to cut. Now let me put a plug in here for cutting high. And the reason being, it's just not good for the crops you want to keep if you cut really low, unless you're in a Bermuda grass field or something like that. Most of the grasses that we raise in the Midwest are cool season grasses. They don't like to be cut down to the ground. It makes it hard for them to regrow and compete with the weeds. Now, for some reason, growing up on a farm, my dad liked to slick it off. I mean, he cut low, and that's not good on the grass. And we found we had a lot of weeds in the field. I went to school and learned that you needed higher grass, and it grew better if it was 3 or 4 inches tall when you cut it. And I got him finally to lift it up, and that solved a lot of problems. It solved, number one, the problem of the grass regrowing, and number two, it solved the fact that we were hitting rocks all the time with our bush hog. And you don't want to do that. That's hard on them. They'll take it, they're designed for it, but it will shorten their life. And it's also dangerous. You can kick a rock out, and you don't ever want anybody around when you're bush hogging, but if there's somebody, a neighbor or something in the next field, or somebody driving by on the road, and you're mowing, I mean, at the ground and kicking rocks out, there's no telling where they go, and your blade tip speed is somewhere around 11,000 to 14,000 feet per minute. It's like a bullet like going off. So we want to be real careful not to mow too low. And so, like I said, I think 4 inches or 5 inches is a good height to mow. At 4 inches, you'll get a prettier cut. At 5 inches, you'll definitely miss a lot of the rocks that are sticking out of the ground. And if you're in a rocky area like I am, we have rocks that you could pick up all the rocks in the field one year, and the next year there's rocks back again. And why? Because of the freezing and thawing of the ground pushes them out. And it's a never-ending job to try to find those rocks. And the other thing is stumps. If you've cleared the ground and you've got some stumps, I mean, you hit a good-sized stump and you can do some damage to your bush hog or your tractor. It's not good. So let's kick that up. So when you get that height selected, let's say your cutter blades are an inch higher and you're going to mow at 4 inches, so your skids are 3 inches off the ground. Well, then what we're going to do is we're going to measure where our 3-point raise and lower position control is, and we're going to put our stop so we always stop at that point. Most tractors I've ever been around have got some kind of a stop that will stop your lever on your position control going up and down. Now, if you've got an electric 3-point, you don't have this, but most of us have a mechanical 3-point that has a position control lever, and it's got a stop that you can set. And when you go down, it'll only go to that stop unless you move it out and around. And so that stop is going to tell you, this is the height I want to mow at. And so once you hit that stop, you're good. And so set that stop at the height that you want your bush hog to be at. Now that I've got my brush hog set in the front where I want, to the height I want to cut, I want to measure the difference between the height in the back and the height in the front. And most of the time, you're going to want the cut height in the back 1 inch to 2 inches higher than the cut in the front. And there's a reason for that. If you think about it, if you're going over the field and you're cutting and you're level or you're higher in the front than the back, what that's doing is cutting material and it's got nowhere to go. It's either dropping it straight down or it's pushing it forward and you're having to cut it again. Now that'll make a pretty mulched up cut, but it takes a lot of horsepower. And sometimes it's really hard on the tractor. And that's usually what's happening when I get emails from people that are having trouble with losing tractor power. They don't have enough of a rake in the front of their bush hog to get that material out the back. So what you want to do when you've got that front set at the height you want it, go around to the back and measure and see, is there an inch or two difference? And your cutter may differ in how much they recommend the difference be. Check your owner's manual to be sure. But most of them are around a 1 to 2 inch rake, higher in the back than in the front. And when you've got that rake set, what will happen is you'll cut the material and then it'll throw it out the back, and then you can run over more material. Now, if you find out that the back tail wheels are set where you're running uphill when the tail wheels are firmly on the ground, then you need to lift that cutter up, drop your tail wheels down, retighten them and everything, and then let it down to get that rake properly set. And I've seen that before. And again, it'll make a pretty cut, but it takes a gob of horsepower, and you don't really need to be doing that. So the main thing you need to remember on the tail wheel is you want it firmly on the ground when the front is at the height you want, and you want that forward rake so you can expel material out the back. Now, one question I get asked all the time is, how do I adjust my top link? Well, the short answer is, don't worry about it. The only reason the top link is there is to pick up the machine. When you're in the field position and you're cutting, the machine needs to be riding on the lower link arms and the tail wheel. The top link is only along for the ride. Another question I get asked is, do I have to cut at PTO rated engine speed? Well, that's what it says in the owner's manual. And that's generally what I recommend, especially this time of year when you're in lush grass and you've got tall weeds. Crank it up to PTO rated engine speed. And if you're new to tractors, every tractor's got a rated engine speed where it puts out the advertised horsepower that the engine puts out. So if you're cutting big stuff, tall stuff, crank it up to PTO rated engine speed. Now, if you're cutting in the winter when there's not leaves on the plants, or if you're in the late summer when things have quit growing and it's not near as lush, you can cut it down a couple of 100 RPM and be just fine. But don't worry about being at PTO rated engine speed. It's not hurting the tractor any. It's designed for it. Now, a question I get asked all the time is, do I need to sharpen my brush hog blades? And the answer is, do what you feel comfortable with. I generally don't sharpen mine because, again, I'm trying to cut the woody plants off jagged, and it'll do that even when it's pretty dull, and still get a decent cut on the grass. A lot of times people sharpen them, I think, too much, and eventually you get the hardened edge wore off and you'll take chunks out when you hit rocks, and that's not good. But if you're concerned about that, replace the blades, or you can touch them up with an L-head grinder. A lot of people that do it commercially do touch them up just once in a while with an L-head grinder. Make sure you balance it and get the same amount of sharpening on one side as you do the other, or you'll get an imbalance. One other thing, if you hook up your brush hog and you kick in the PTO and it's doing this, and I've seen them do that, you've probably hit something and got one of the blades. The blades swing underneath there, and if you get one of them tucked under the stump jumper and then kick in your PTO, she'll do that. And so check that. Make sure you don't have a blade tucked underneath the stump jumper, because that'll wake you up real quick. I can tell you from experience. Well, that's it. That's my list. If you'll do those things, I think you'll be real pleased with the cut you get with your rough cut rotary cutter. One other tweak you can do, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. That helps me out a bunch. Real easy to do. Just click the mic face icon and check the bell so you get notified when I post future videos. Here's a link to my website and the Tractor Fun Store with really cool things for sale for the tractor owner. It helps support my channel. And here's another couple of videos you might want to watch. Thanks for watching.